Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the warm weekend and was able to get outside for a little bit. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Toledo's virtual meeting featuring John Muenzer, UT Hall of Fame swimmer. But before I get started, I'd like to invite Irshad Bannister to deliver our reflection and Lisa McDuffie to lead us as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Let us pray. God, thank you for our members of Toledo Rotary. Thank you for their giving spirit and servant hearts. Lord, we ask that you continue to watch over our great nation as we battle this pandemic. As we try to get back to our lives, let us not forget the over 540,000 that have lost theirs. We are thankful for our speaker today, John Muenzer. Let his words and his story inspire us to be better versions of ourselves. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand with me for our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag, to the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Back to you, President Alex.
Thank you, Irshad, and thank you, Lisa. At this time, I'd like to thank Hollywood Casino as March's weekly meeting sponsor. Thank you, Rotarian Justin Carter. We've gotten away from introducing guests, but we're going to get back to introducing them on Zoom, and of course continue that as we transition into live meetings. But we do have a guest with us today, and Pat Sheehan, if you would please introduce your guests.
Yes, thanks, President Alex. It's my pleasure to introduce my good friend Rob Loeb to us today. Rob is a partner with Venture Visionary Partners. They are located in the old Capital Bank building on Monroe Street. So I want to welcome Rob. And Rob and I have done a lot of swimming over the years. He knows John, but we're particularly going to be in awe of John's accomplishments today. So John, look forward to hearing your message.
Okay, looking good, Rob. Glad to have you. All right, couple updates. I wanted to remind everybody of our April Fool's Trivia Night on April 1st, believe it or not, at 5 p.m. on Zoom. So probably be our last Zooming event. To my understanding, there's some really great prizes like dinner with the president and some really other cool things. So please join us. It's mentioned on page 3 of the spoke. Also mentioned on page 5 of the spoke is information on the V project. So please review that. Remember to send us your selfie when you get the vaccine. I'm actually looking forward to receiving my first shot later this afternoon. So guarantee you I'll send you a selfie of that. So also congratulations to Judy Siebenek. Featured in the spoke as well for her retirement after just a few years with Hospice Northwest Ohio. And we definitely will miss Judy. She's been fantastic, a fantastic leader of the club. And then finally, one other thing, I want to ask the chair of our Vocational Services Committee, Heather Carnes, to say a couple words and provide a quick update on one of their upcoming service projects.
Thank you, President Alex. I actually have 2 announcements. First, I'd like to just give everyone an update on the 4-way test speech contest. Every year at this time, we launch the 4-way test speech contest. Typically, the winner of our club goes on to compete in districts. This year, there will not be a larger district competition, which gave us an opportunity to have some creativity with the Toledo Rotary contest. So this year's Toledo Rotary's four-way test speech contest, that's a mouthful. This year for our contest, we are asking students to submit a speech that's only 90 seconds in length, and we're inviting them to focus on specific topics. They could choose climate change, social media, or civics. The information has been shared with Toledo schools, both public and private. It's also posted on the Rotary website. The deadline to register is April 16th. We are looking forward to sharing our winners with you, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. In addition, the Vocational Services Committee is preparing to host a virtual career panel at the end of April. We are looking forward to assisting area students with their career exploration. If you're interested in sharing your career path with students, I invite you to send me an email with your area of career expertise. There will also be a notice about this and an email that will go out later this week in the Spoke. We invite all Rotarians to become involved in this, and we hope that this won't be our last career panel, although it may be our last virtual one. Thank you very much. Back to you, President Alex.
All right, thank you, Heather. Thank you so much for all you do with the Vocational Services Committee, and thanks for putting up a couple of excellent service projects. So finally, what we've been waiting for, now I'd like to have Rotarian Fran Anderson come up and introduce today's speaker.
Thank you, Alex. I would like to introduce you to my nephew, John Muenzer. John, as some of you may know, has been doing long distance swims for over the past 37 years. What you may not know is that he completed his first mile swim in 1972 while attending the Anderson summer camp. He embarked on a quest to complete two goals over 30 years ago, the Triple Crown and the Grand Slam of swimming. Now just one swim away to reach these goals, Catalina Island in Long Beach, California, or to Long Beach, California, I'm sorry. Life's challenges have made reaching these goals take longer than he imagined. I hope today you will find his story both interesting and inspiring. I would like to now present to you my favorite nephew, John Muenzer. John.
And Franny, I want to make sure that I'm unmuted, but if you can hear me, we'll get going here. Thanks again, Aunt Franny, for your introduction. A lot of people don't know that, but yeah, actually my first mile swim was completed. At that time, the Andersons had their summer camp for the employees' kids, and I was out at the camp, and I was in arts and crafts, and somebody said, hey, if you swim a mile in their pool, you get a trophy. And I said, okay, let's go. So that was actually the first time. But as I've been working on these swims, I'm frequently asked, you know, why did you start swimming? How did you get into long distance swimming? And why is it taking you so long? You know, coming up, next birthday is 60. And I must tell you that I had really thought that I would do these swims in my 20s. So it's been a very, very long process so far. But my life has been really hit with a lot of adversity. And I know everybody that's listening today has had a lot of adversity in their lives. And we hear it all the time. Oh, you know, he's faced adversity. Well, one day I decided I was going to look up and see what did adversity really mean. And adversity stands for difficulties, misfortune, ill luck, bad luck, hardship, distress, disaster, suffering, sorrow, and heartbreak. Once I got done reading the definition of adversity, my first question was, why would any of us want to be associated with adversity? But what I came to find out through adversity is adversity really, it defines us. All of us have gone through adversity in our lives. And the adversity that I faced has been intertwined with my goal of wanting to do the Triple Crown and the Grand Slam. And what I found is not only does adversity define all of us, but it tests our faith, it tests our will to continue on mentally and physically when we're faced with challenges. So I want to get to the why. 1975, I was a freshman at St. John's High School, and I went out for the football team. And at that time, first-year head coach was Ed Heinschel, who many of you know went on to have a storied career at St. John's High School. But that was his first year, and he was my coach. And what I found out very quickly in football was you had to be big and you had to be fast, and I was neither. I was slow, I was small, and I was afraid of death. I got hit so hard during my freshman year, I didn't know if I was going to make it through. But Ed Heinschel really made me understand, don't give up. And he reached a lot of students during that freshman year. All the starters, he was heavily involved with, but there were many of us that really didn't play a lot during the games, but he had an impact on. So that summer of 1976, I watched the Olympics, and like many of you that are around today, we were fortunate enough to watch a young swimmer named Mark Spitz win 7 gold medals. And at that time, the head coach for the Olympic team was a gentleman, his name was Doc Councilman. Little did I know that when I was watching those Olympics in 1976, my path would cross Doc's, and he would be influential in my life forever. So that's really what happened. Is I decided to go into swimming because football just didn't work out for me. So I started swimming my sophomore year, which by all intents and purposes for competitive swimming is starting late. I came in and I was swimming against kids that had been swimming for 6-7 years. But I was very fortunate to have a coach, Gary Vischer, who really took me under his wing, and he said, listen, I think you can be good at this, but we're gonna have to work doubly hard for you to catch up. And that's what we did. So by the end of my senior year, I'd had some level of success at the YMCA level of swimming. And I was fortunate again to have a gentleman named Bob Fountain. He was one of just a few colleges that even showed any interest in me at the time. And he allowed through a scholarship for me to go to the University of Toledo and really continue my 4-year swimming goals. And what happened was, that was kind of the why of how I got into swimming. But what happened was in 1980, I was fortunate enough for Bob Fountain to connect me with Doc Councilman. So I packed up my car and I drove to IU and I trained there for 3 months. And not only did it revolutionize my swimming when I got back, I went from being a mediocre swimmer in the MAC to being in the top 6 in all my races. I had coaches that came up to me and said, what the heck happened? Doc threw me in a lane with All-Americans, Chuck Sharp and Jim Halliburton, and it was just a great experience. But while I was there at IU, Doc sat me down. He said, listen, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you're not going to make the Olympics. I said, okay, okay, at least you're honest. But he said, just watching you, I think you could be a great long distance swimmer. I had never been introduced to long distance swimming, and Doc the previous year had been the oldest person to swim the English Channel. So Doc was really the reason that, he got me so involved in swimming. So that's how I got into the long distance swimming. And when I returned back to the University of Toledo after that summer, my sophomore, junior, senior years really were great. I had a fairly good level of success in the Mid-American Conference. But when I graduated from the University of Toledo, I felt completely unfulfilled. I did not meet my goals. I had always mentally thought if I just had a couple more years, I think my competitive swimming would have gotten me to the highest level, potentially making the Olympic trials and those things. So when I was at IU in 1980, Doc said, why don't you pick a swim and try to do it? So I decided to try to swim. Many of you, and I will show you, what we tried to do was swim from Aereo Beach in Cleveland to the, bear with me here, I want to make sure I open this up right, across to Canada. And what happened was And in this picture here, the reason why I start with that picture is because I don't even recognize that guy anymore. I look in the mirror and I see a 6-year-old, so I can't even relate to that guy. But what happened was I tried the first year and we were about 14 miles out and really bad storms hit. And if any of you followed the swim back in that day, it was really a very dangerous situation. The lightning had knocked out our radar. At that time, they only had Loran tracking. You know, we don't have the radar like we have today. But I distinctly remember on that swim, at one point, everybody in the boat was looking in a completely different direction from where I was. It was pitch dark. It was around midnight. And I remember thinking to myself, nobody on that boat knows where I am right now in these, 6-7 foot swells. So they ended up realizing that there was no way the storms were going to end, and we packed it up, and I came home disappointed. The second year I thought, well, all I have to do is just retrain and I'll do it. Well, I got about 20, 30 miles into it and failed. And I think primarily it was because I was cold. I got cold in the water. So I came home, and it was really a disappointing time because I felt like a failure, and I felt like a joke to the community. It was really a really, you talk about adversity. It was a hardship for me. But I talked to Coach Fountain. He said, listen, let's do this. Let's try to do a swim from Point Pelee to Cedar Point. And this time we changed the training, and they put me in Lake Erie 2-3 days a week. And I swam no matter what the conditions were. If the waves were going, the storms were going, we were out there swimming. And was able to cross from Point Pelee to Cedar Point. It was a record that had held since 1957, and was able to get that record. And then at that point, I decided, boy, I'd love to go after the English Channel and these things. But I got married to my sweetheart, Mary, who's in this picture right here. And I took a position with Owens Corning Fiberglass, and they promptly transferred me to Kansas City. And I don't know if everybody has been to Kansas City, but there's not a lot of water in Kansas City. So I found myself in Kansas City, and we started our family. And really, if you can imagine, over the next, from 1985 roughly to 2009, or actually 2008, I went and swam every day, an hour and a half, with the hopes that I would get a chance at doing these swims. But we started raising our family. I started building a business, and the moons didn't line up for me to go after these swims. So to fast forward now, in 2008, I sat the family down and I said, hey, I think this is the time I'd like to go after a couple of these swims. What do you think? And everybody was on board. And at that time, Mary and I had 7 kids. And so there was a lot of activities going on. And I certainly didn't want to tell my kids, hey, you can't go after your goals because dad's still chasing his. So I had to do all my training around all of those kids and all of their activities. So in 2008, I found myself at about 260 pounds. Even though I was swimming, I wasn't really swimming hard, I was swimming distance. And I was really concerned about how am I going to go after these swims? And I was fortunate enough to run across Marcia Cleveland, who is a Hall of Fame swimmer, and found out she lived in Chicago. So I applied, and Marcia took me in. She does 1 or 2 swimmers a year. And that really started the whole process to go after the Triple Crown and the Grand Slam. So all of 2008, I swam masters to lose the weight, got my weight down to about 235, and then began the swimming in 2009. In 2009, what Marcia wanted me to do was also to do Tampa Bay first and just see how I did on Tampa Bay leading up to the English Channel in that July. Well, that swim ended up being a really difficult swim. And actually to this day, it's the hardest swim I've ever been involved with. And the reason was it's a 24.5 mile swim. The day that we took off, there was 16 swimmers. We came around the point and we were faced with 3 to 4 foot waves head on. And I faced those waves for about 5 hours, and it was really, really tough. I was throwing up and really was getting to a point where I started hearing some world-class swimmers that were there. They were actually pulling out and stopping. And what happened was, I stumbled onto something here. To stop myself from throwing up, I started eating, I had them throw me out a bag of potato chips, and they threw me a Coca-Cola. And I drank the Coke and I ate the potato chips, and it really settled my stomach down. And I ended up swimming the rest of the 24.5 miles. But the swim itself was a little unnerving at times, because at that time of the season, you've got the bull sharks in there. They're coming in after the terrapin. And probably one of the scariest times for me was, as you go under each of the 3 bridges, the person that my boat captain, they would have to break off from you, and they were gone for about 10 to 15 minutes. They had to go all the way to the length of the other side of the bridge, go under where it was deep, and then come back and pick up with you. So when you were swimming, you had to swim under those bridges. If any of you have been down there and gone over those bridges in Tampa Bay, I can tell you it's dark, it's cold, and it's a mind game, because you don't know what's underneath you. So was able to get through the Tampa Bay swim, and after I got through the Tampa Bay swim, I came back home and realized that I wasn't ready to go to England to do the English Channel. It was really an eye-opening experience. So my coach at that point said, I think what we need to do is really increase your training, and you need to do an 8 and a 10 and a 12-hour swim in Lake Michigan. So at that time, we lived in Elgin, Illinois. So I was able to go down and train in Lake Michigan 2, 3, 4 times a week. And we changed the training around. So what happened was, one funny story, I was doing my 12-hour swim, and I started at midnight and was going to noon the next day. And I was on the beach at Ohio Street Beach, and a couple had just finished dinner, and they were walking back to their hotel room to go to bed. And they asked me what I was doing, and I said I was training for the English Channel. And the next day at noon, they came walking by again when I was finishing my swim. And the guy yelled down, "Are you starting another swim?" And I said, "No, I'm just ending the swim." And he said, You've been swimming for 12 hours since last night at midnight? And I said, "Yes." And so the funny story is, when I was training down there was a lot of people walking along the lakefront, and I got engaged with a lot of people. And it was really funny how people just couldn't grasp and get their minds around the idea that you would swim 10, 12, 14, 24 hours. So I continued doing the training, and got ready for the English Channel, and headed over to England in July of 2009 with Mary and my youngest son, Ray, who at the time was 1.5 years. And what happened was, when we got into England, we ended up sitting there for 10 days. The weather conditions, it was sunny, but that year, if you were a golfing person, the British Open, all that, they had heavy wind that year. And so I spent 10 days training in the harbor. But one of the things that I learned is, you need to know your surroundings. So when we first landed in England, we got to the hotel room, and I said to Mary, "Hey, I'm going to go down to the harbor, and I want to just do a quick swim." So I went down to the harbor, and there was nobody there. Got in the water, swam for about 30 minutes, came back. Well, the next morning I went down to train, and what I didn't realize, and this will give you an understanding of how much water moves through the English Channel, the water rises and lowers 24 feet every 6 hours. And when I got down to the harbor that morning, there were 15-foot high walls that went the whole length. There were 8 of them. And I didn't even know they were there because they were underwater. And what I realized was, when I got in and swam, I was swimming over these massive walls of metal. And all I had to do was run into one, and they probably would have knocked me out, or it would have cut me. But I was really fortunate that the water was high enough over those walls that I swam safely in the harbor. As I mentioned, with the water going in the English Channel 24 feet up and down, it just gives you an idea of how strong the currents are between England and France. So we sat there for 10 days, and the winds they didn't diminish at all. Finally, I got a call from my captain. And the way it works in the English Channel is, every captain of the boat has 4 slots. So there's 4 swimmers that have a 2-week slot, roughly timing. And what happens is they go to the first swimmer and he says, or she says, yes, I want to go, or no. And then they keep going. Well, the weather conditions were so bad, the first, second, and third slot swimmers, they all passed. And he said, you've got this slot, but you got to leave at 10 at night. We've got a very small window before the weather really picks up and it gets bad again. So I found myself on the boat with my crew heading out into the English Channel for the first time at 10 o'clock at night. And the waves were still running 3 to 4 feet. And I remember distinctly sitting on the boat and a wave hitting the front and coming over it. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. So that wasn't really the best mental state to have as you're heading out into the English Channel. But we got out there and he said, hey, you're ready to go, jump in, swim to shore. They had a huge spotlight. And once you clear the water, we'll blow the horn and you start to swim. Well, what they did is they took me to one of the roughest beaches along England, along Dover. And the pebbles and the stones were so sharp, I couldn't even walk out. I had to climb, I had to crawl over these stones. And then I stood up on them and could hardly stand. And then I actually got back down on my stomach and crawled back across the stones to get to the water. And I remember taking off going, this is just not the way I imagined that this was going to start. But got into the swim. And what happened was we were about 2 hours into the swim and there was a very mild light on the side of the boat for me to visually connect with. And I saw a couple things floating under me. And I thought, oh, that must be algae from all of the English Channel being so rough. And was swimming. And then all of a sudden I got my first jellyfish sting. And I realized that these were jellyfish that I was swimming into. And I had never been stung by a jellyfish before, but if you can imagine what it felt like was someone taking a hammer and a nail, hitting it through your forearm, and then taking a hot iron and put it on your arm. And it was really the gift that kept giving for the next 5 to really 10 minutes. It was like a bell curve. It got so painful, and then it began to retreat just in time for me to get stung again. So I started getting stung. I probably was stung about 10, 11, 12 times, and that's when I stopped. And I said to my boat captain, hey, there's something wrong here. I'm getting stung up. And he took a huge, powerful light and he turned it on and I went under the water. And the thing that happened was there were hundreds of jellyfish underneath the water. It was actually shocking that I was in this pool of jellyfish. And at that time, they threw me a towel and I tried to knock them out of the way, and they were sticking to the towel. And that was when adversity really hit, and you say to yourself, okay, I'm in a really difficult time. I'm near heartbreak because I've been training a year, and what am I going to do? Get in the boat, go home and tell everybody I didn't make the swim because of jellyfish? I just couldn't face that. And a very strong anger and determination came over me. And I said some choice words to the captain. And I said, let's go, keep the light on. And what happened is, as I was swimming, I realized that the jellyfish that were stinging me, the tails on them they were up on the surface, they were sideways. And once I realized those were the tails were stinging me, not the ones that were straight down, I basically maneuvered myself for about 15 minutes through the field of jellyfish. And I just let them bounce off my head, and I stayed away from the ones where the tails were up on, on the surface. So got through the jellyfish ordeal. It was unnerving because it was dark. I couldn't see them, and was probably no more than a couple hours back into a really good rhythm. And with no warning, I got bumped from just above my left knee all the way up along my hip, pretty severely bumped. And I didn't know what it was. And I just kept swimming. And I said, okay, that was not good. Get as close to the boat as you can. So I actually kept swimming my pace, got myself as close to the boat as I could. And I thought, was it a shark? What the heck was it? Because it was a pretty significant bump. And I was coming up on my food break. And when I came in, my crew yelled, you had 3 dolphins right next to you. So then I mentally knew that the softness of what bumped me, it was a dolphin. But he really came up and nudged me. And it was, again, just another unnerving thing because it's pitch dark. You can't see anything. So kept swimming and was very fortunate enough to get to France. When I left England, the water temperature was 57 degrees, and when I got to France, it was 58. So fairly consistent in terms of the temperature. But I didn't have the sun and heat on my back at all because I swam through the night. One of the things too that I wanted to try to visualize for you was when I got to France and I came out in this middle picture and I raised my arms, behind me up to the right, it was really, it was something. I came out and I looked up and there was a huge German bunker built into the cliff with a lot of overgrown ivy and trees and things. And it was just such a striking moment for me because I realized what were those men, our heroes from World War II, facing when they came onto that beach. And the other thought that I had was through their sacrifice, I had the opportunity to swim the English Channel right now. It was really internally a real emotional minute for me to see that bunker up there. So went back, got in the boat and headed back to France and literally packed my bags and we went to the airport and flew home. So I came within about 12 hours of not even getting a chance to swim the English Channel and just coming back and not having a slot. So then what happened was we got back and I said to Mary and the kids, hey, you know what? I think I'd like to just go after Manhattan Island. And boom, many of us were faced with the economic downturn in 09, 10, and 11. And, you know, again, adversity hit me again. I had a lot of obstacles and things that happened in my businesses. And ultimately, it catapulted me to another, almost to 2015 of not being able to do any swims and going back to just swimming at the pool 4 or 5 times a week. It was really disappointing because one thing you start to realize, the older you're getting, you don't recover as well. And so time was starting to become a little bit of an issue for me mentally. So in 2015, it was decided that I would go and do Manhattan Island. And I had signed up for Manhattan Island and was beginning my training in 2015. And as adversity goes, my biggest obstacle and the thing that our whole family faced, my son Dan in March of 2016 was tragically killed in a motorcycle accident. And it was a very difficult time for our whole family. Mary and I had to come together and really help navigate all of our family members through a tragedy that I was never prepared for. None of us were. The loss of Dan was just decimating to us. And what I realized in the early going was I couldn't even swim anymore. You know, I was fully focused on all of the other 6 kids. Some of our kids were already married. We had grandchildren. And Mary and I knew that we had to navigate this through so that everybody would still continue to live their lives. We didn't want everybody to just come to a standstill. Dan would never have wanted that. You know, and so that really, I called the Manhattan organizers, told them what happened, and they said, listen, because the Manhattan has a 4 to 5 year waiting list. And they said, listen, when you decide you want to do this, you'll be in that year. So we took the next roughly about a year and a half, and we worked through our tragedy the best we could. I tell people all the time, we miss Dan tremendously. But what happened was in 2017, I felt Dan's, I just felt his presence, and I felt him say, Dad, you got to go, let's do this Manhattan Island. So in 2017, I contacted them and said, I want to go after Manhattan Island in 2018. And I started back at the pool, and again, was not really in very good shape. And I carved Dan's initials in the tile of my lane, and he was with me, and we began training. So 2018, after training for 9 months, Marcia had me ready, and we headed off to Manhattan Island to do the swim. And when we got there, I was fortunate enough, the Manhattan organization, they allowed pacers to get in the water with you. And my son, Ray, who at the time was 9 years old, I'm sorry, he was 11, coming up on 11, he was swimming and I asked him to be my pacer. So what happened was I started the swim, and the Manhattan swim is a little bit different. And here's a slide. This, when you start Manhattan, you go up the East River, and where the East River connects to the Harlem, they call it Hell's Gate. And Hell's Gate is a very tough part of the swim because the waters are going different directions. It's very, very rough. What's going on under the water, on top, it looks very smooth, but underneath it was a blender on steroids. So I got through Hell's Gate and got into the Harlem, and was very fortunate enough to have Ray get in and swim with me. Just really made the whole experience was having him by my side, and he swam with me for about 10, 15 minutes, and just very enjoyable. Ray ended up, as you know, I mentioned with the Dan passing away in the accident, Ray became a very big part of all of us being able to survive the tragedy. So having him with me was just a neat experience. So I headed up the Harlem, and I'd fallen off the pace of the lead swimmer. So it was very much like a pool in the Harlem. So I said to my crew, let's go, let's catch everybody. So I made a fatal mistake, really, almost a fatal mistake. I ended up proceeding on a 2 to 3 hour, extremely hard, intense pace, and caught up to the top 5 people right in time that we came around under the George Washington Bridge, and I still had 10 miles to come down the Hudson. And we had very, very difficult conditions. The waves were coming head on again, and the current that usually pulls back towards the ocean wasn't there that day. So what I had done is I had tired myself out pretty severely, and coming down that final 10-mile stretch, there was a couple of times mentally where I thought, geez, I might have made a mistake here. I hope I can hang on. Was able to hang on. And what happened was there was a Norwegian cruise line coming in, and I was having shoulder problems. And so I had to hold up and I had to tread water for about 10 minutes while this Norwegian cruise line got docked. And so the other 4 swimmers in the lead had gotten on the other side of the Norwegian, and they were still swimming. But it ended up being a godsend for me because I was able to work on my shoulder and loosen it up and then finish the swim. So was able to get the Manhattan swim completed, and really felt a sense of accomplishment on it. Came home and thought, you know, when do I want to try to do Catalina? Took that year, and then COVID hit last year. Well, California shut down the Catalina swim last year, and it's still shut down this year. So again, adversity hit me again. And I've now kind of zeroed in where I would like to go after the Catalina swim in 2022. The Catalina swim has some real distinct challenges to it, other than completely different than the other 3 swims. And I need this swim for the Triple Crown, and I need this swim for the Grand Slam. But this swim, you leave it around midnight. So the swim is, again, in the dark because of the way the waves and the winds are off the coast. You start at midnight. My crew is going to have to be really, really in tune with what's going on around me, because the seal population has really grown from San Francisco, the Farallon Islands, down into the Long Beach area. And the shark presence is there. The orchid whales presence is there. And you're swimming in the middle of the night, 20 miles off the coast of California. So I'm really looking forward to the swim, and it will finally bring my almost 40-year quest to an end, and really, really looking forward to it. But one of the things that I wanted to say was, in closing, I believe we must all, keep our dreams and our goals in our lives to the very end. I hope everyone here today accomplishes their goals, no matter how big or small, and know that adversity is around us all to the very end. So we might as well embrace it. And that's really, really my story, of why it's taken me so long to accomplish these swims. So
John, that's awesome.
that's it.
Thank you so much for your story and for kind of talking through all of this. Fellow Rotarians, if you do have any questions, feel free to type it in the chat, send me a private message, or go ahead and raise your hand, and I will start. So John and I had the privilege of talking a little bit prior. So John, you're talking Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, English Channel. You're talking probably varying degrees. To Tampa Bay, you're talking varying degrees in water, probably 30, 40 degrees. How do you physically train for something that is so difficult that you can't predict the weather, right? You can't predict the conditions of the water, etc. How do you train for that? And what's kind of your process to be prepared for stuff like that?
Yeah, you know, when I first did the swim across Lake Erie, there was really no book to read. And I really only, I was a miler in college. So I thought, well, all I have to do is just, swim forever and I'll make it. But I didn't understand the physical demands of the different conditions on the body. It's pretty amazing what cold water does to you. But also, I spent the first 2 years, as Aunt Franny will attest to, swimming out at the Anderson's Lake or pond, and just swam around and around and around for 4 to 6 hours, just almost daily. We just swam and swam. But what happened was at the end of the second one, I realized that I had to also integrate in actually swimming in the conditions you're going to be in. And no matter what the conditions were, if you had 4 to 5 foot waves and there was lightning and storms, I went out in it. But really the life-changing moment for me was when Marcia Cleveland took me on as one of her swimmers. This is a lady that's in the Hall of Fame. She's done some swims that are just unbelievable. She swam the North Sea. That is a major swim. And she really taught me through the training of what I needed to do. So one of the things that we changed, or really 3 things we changed. One was I would do swimming in the pool in the morning or at night, but I would always swim in Lake Michigan 3 to 4 times a week. And then she built my endurance up to do a 6, an 8, a 10, and a 12-hour swim. And we practiced what I was going to have for my diet. We practiced everything. One of the things that Marcia really believed in was her job was when I get to the water's edge, whether it was Tampa Bay, the English Channel, Manhattan, and hopefully Catalina, she wanted me to know that when I got to that water's edge, the endurance and the mental power to make the swim was there. All it was navigating any weather conditions that would come up and actual, sea life that would come into your space. But we have the training, again, it is a real commitment because you're training 2 to 3 hours every day and then heavily on weekends. And one of the things that I really realized was this is a sport that mentally is very challenging. It's a very lonely sport. You're talking hours and hours and hours of just swimming. So you have to make up games. You have to make up thought processes that help every hour. I set something up to either think about or do in my mind, and then I change it the next hour, the next hour, the next hour. But also you touched on the cold water. I've seen some world-class swimmers. I trained with a gentleman. He was 4th at the Pan Am Games, unbelievable miler. And he went a week and a half before me to attempt the English Channel, and the cold water got him. He was completely delusional. If you watch the tape, he didn't even know where he was. So it's really acclimating yourself to be able to stay in, 55, 56, 57 degree water, for 13, 15 hours.
Wow. I don't know how you do it, to be honest with you, but kudos. Next, I want to go to Bob Seaman. So Bob, next question is from you, my friend. Go ahead.
John, first of all, I think it's a wonderful inspiration to hear that you have kept swimming and keep doing it. It's good for us all not to give up on our goals. And I keep trying stuff that's beyond my ability as well. Although this is clearly not beyond your ability. But anyway, I've read some stuff about cold water swimming, and there's a health benefit from cold water swimming. And can you speak to anything about that? You obviously done a lot.
Yeah, Bob, that's a good question. I'll tell you what happens when you begin to train in cold water over the course of 3, 4, 5 months. When I start to train for these swims, I'll start in Lake Michigan in May 1st. The water temperature is about 45 to 48 degrees typically. And you start out with a 20 to 30 minute, and then you progress through the summer. But there is a transformation that the body makes in cold water. I get extremely much bigger lats. The body transforms into you get bigger and you get really solid. It's really an interesting transformation when you're training in cold water. The interesting thing is when you first start training back into cold water, when you push off and start to swim, it's almost like putting your finger in a candle. You know, when you were a little kid, you'd put your finger through the candle of the flame. Your body inherently tells you to pull your hand back. Well, when you start in cold water, you start out at the waist and then you push off slowly. Your brain, it is a fight that it's really intense because it's telling your body to stand up and get out of the cold water. And you have to fight it for several minutes. It's intense. And all of your blood is pulled from your extremities into your core. So you can feel it. You can feel the blood leave your arms and your legs to pull to the core. It's really a dynamic, interesting thing. And then after about 3 to 4 minutes, the headache is intense. Your headache starts to dissipate. The blood starts going back into your arms and legs. And you then feel very comfortable swimming. But we had a joke, when you get out of cold water, you have literally 60 seconds before you start shaking really badly, especially if you're in 57-degree water for, a 5 to 6 hour swim. So we had a big joke. The first thing you did was you raced to your bag. You had to get your socks on. You could get all your other clothes on, but you could never get your socks on. So that was what we would do. We would race from the water, throw our socks on, and then the heavy chilling effect would happen, but you could still get your sweats on and your heavy coat and hat. So the water temperature, it's a really interesting dynamic, cold water.
Awesome. Great question.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to go to Kelly. Kelly, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Wow, John, this is amazing. My swimming that I do is like nothing, and I think I'm pretty cool. So this is just really neat.
Kelly.
2 questions for you. When I do 5K open water swims, I liken it to like a swim up bar to get my nutrition. There's just a boat out there and I swim up and get whatever I need and then take off again. So how do you do your nutrition when you're on these long swims? And then the other question is, I've only swam in Lake Erie. The longest I've swam is just a mile, and just dealing with the waves, getting out. What's your technique for when you're swimming in the waves, when the waves are coming over you?
2 really good questions. So I'm going to talk about the second one first. I do change, if you watch a competitive swimmer, they swim with a high elbow and a big reach. When I'm in waves and training in waves, I actually go with more of a swing stroke when I'm swimming. I swing more than coming over here. And the reason is that the waves have a tendency to hit your stroke and it can stop you, right? Just stop your stroke. So you just develop a swing stroke. And my swing stroke, I was able to really handle it into, when waves were 7 to 8 feet, I could still continue swimming in those conditions without any real problems. When it got over 7 feet, then it gets a little bit more challenging. But anywhere up to that 7 foot mark, my swing stroke really did me well. And I was able to really use the waves. If they're pushing you, you can get an unbelievable push. Unfortunately, on Manhattan Island and Tampa Bay, I had the waves coming directly at me, but the swing stroke really worked well. The diet was really important. My diet really changed over the years, and I got down to on the English Channel, because there was so much current water coming through. My feedings were 30 seconds or less. So I was heavy with a liquid diet. They would throw out the bottle. I would drink the 8 to 9 ounces and drop the bottle. They would pull it back in on a string and I would turn and keep going. On the English Channel, I went with a liquid diet primarily, but what you had to do was you had to roll over on your back and kick parallel to the boat, because if you tried to tread water, it could move you in that 30 seconds. Each one of those stops could add over an hour onto the swim. So you had to be very disciplined, especially on the English Channel because of the current. But I went with that. And then on Manhattan and also Tampa Bay, I implemented one of the best foods ever, peanut butter and jelly. I can't tell you, having a peanut butter and jelly square when you are hungry on one of these swims is like eating lobster and steak and having the best bottle of wine ever. So I went with peanut butter and jelly. I went with a liquid Prips drink, and I would go with small squares of chocolate. And that's pretty much what my diet really came down to and really worked for me.
Awesome. Thanks, John. We have about 3 minutes left for questions, and we have 3 more questions here. So hopefully we can get to all of them. Pat Sheehan, go ahead, sir.
Hey, John, thank you very much. I'm Pat Sheehan. I've done a lot of swimming in my life, and I did a race in Lake Erie a few years back. I think our waves were like 5 to 6 feet, and I thought I was gonna die. So I salute you for what you do. I also have done that Lake Michigan swim off Ohio Beach a few times, and if the water's below 75, I've got my wetsuit on, and if the waves are bigger than a foot, I don't go out. So I'm in awe of what you have done. But I want to say best of luck to you. And I know when you do that Catalina swim that Dan's going to be right on your shoulder, and
Thank you.
You're going to succeed. So best of luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Pat. Next, Don Yerkes. Don, the floor is yours.
Hi, John. This has been a fascinating talk. When you swim these distances, do you put anything on your body like a type of grease to help insulate yourself?
That's a great question. When Ederle was the first woman to swim the English Channel, back then they would grease up all over the whole body. In my Lake Erie swim, we did the same thing. But what we came to find out over time was when you lather all that grease on, you can't perspire. So I had moved away from that. And on all of these 3 swims, I only put the Vaseline lanolin in the chafing areas. But the rest of the body, you got to perspire, and you got to stay disciplined to keep your balance of your heat. So I love to talk, but on these swims, you got to be really disciplined. You got to keep moving, because once you start getting cold, it can end your swim. Eventually, it's very difficult to come back when you're cold.
Awesome. And last but not least, Michael Pfeiffer, the floor is yours.
Hey, John, how are you?
Good, Mike. How are you?
Good. Great to see you as always.
Good
hey,
to
John,
see you.
Two questions. First off, your calorie intake, because I can remember when you were, you did Lake Erie and so forth, and the food that you would eat. Have you had to modify your calorie intake over the years? And then the second question is this: throughout these swims, to get certified, you can't come out of the water, can you? I mean, you can't come aboard the boat and then go back in. You're in the water, right?
Correct. Yeah. So these are all certified swims that are part of the Triple Crown and Grand Slam. And so the rules are pretty specific. Not only do you have a captain and his crew, but the association puts somebody on the boat to make sure that you have 1 suit, 1 cap, 2 pairs of goggles, and your light sticks. You can't wear a wetsuit, and you can't touch anything or be touched by anybody, or they disqualify the swim. So they're very specific. And the English Channel, the Triple Crown and the Grand Slam, these are really nostalgic things. And so they protect the brand very, very tightly to make sure that nobody cheats on these swims. As far as the calorie intakes, when I'm swimming and really in the heart of training, I'll tell you, I'm probably taking in anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day. You can eat and drink really anything you want. It's a great time. But when you stop swimming, you got to be careful. They start blowing up. Good to see you, Mike.
Awesome, John. Thank you so much. And I believe at this point, I will turn it back to President Alex.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Wow. John, thank you so much for your presentation today. Very uplifting and inspirational. I know it makes me want to go out and swim a mile, but I don't really swim, so I'm not going to do that. Actually, that's not true. I have swam before, and a mile is about as far as I would ever go. So anyway, thank you. What a great presentation. As our gift to you, we'll be sending you a well-known book in Toledo, Historical Tales of Toledo, authored by Rotary past president, Clint Mock. We will also make a donation to the Polio Plus Fund in your name. And again, thanks for joining us today, John. And now, to send us off into laughter, past President Chuck Mann for another episode of Chuck's Chuckles.
Marcel Marceau was born on March 22nd, 1923. An Emmy-winning French mime, his most famous quote was, "Here are a half a dozen mime observations. My dad once told me I would make a great mime. I was speechless. My girlfriend ran off years ago to pursue her dream of becoming a mime. I haven't heard from her since. Stephen Wright once asked, when you shoot a mime, do you need to use a silencer? How does a mime relieve herself? Goes without saying. And last night I played a blank CD at full volume. The mime next door went nuts. And finally, a mime was arrested recently after getting into a bar fight and breaking his left arm. He still has the right to remain silent. President Alex."
Okay, never fails. Thank you, Chuck. Next week, Monday, March 29th, one of our own. We have Rotarian Janie Miller, and her topic is travel in the time of COVID. You guys won't want to miss this. We have one committee meeting today, membership engagement, which starts directly after this meeting. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and have a great week. We're adjourned.
I thought that Rotary was for older businessmen. I didn't even realise that girls were invited, when actually it's really exciting to find out that Rotary is for everybody, that it is for, you know, the social entrepreneur on the high street, for the people that are just starting up, you know, like I am.
Well, Rotary's goals have always been the same, working in the community, and these social enterprises are all about working in the community, so we should be working together in the community. It's very simple.
Rotary has changed my life by networking me in with other knowledgeable business professionals and taking on board my crazy and welcoming it as an entrepreneur.
This club is great for us because we now have a small person to consider who's welcome at meetings, and the club is soon to be flexible that we can come along to whatever we need to. It just offers so many opportunities for helping in all kinds of different ways and ways which I really want Matthew to benefit from.
We think it's important that children come along, and particularly as a parent, for them to learn that they should be giving back to their community to help make a difference.
I wanted to become a Rotarian because I wanted to promote that young people in Rotary can do more. Young people can be heavily involved, they can be enthusiastic, and they can be trusted in succeeding in pushing the Rotary further. And I want to help as many young people as well as adults in the community and help develop the community for it to be a better place.
Is it good fun?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And what do you learn?
Helping other people and making them join the club.
Good work. Future membership and marketing chairman right here.